Good Tuesday afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to another video. And we finally made it to the end of February. So that means I get to film my second monthly wrap up. So today I get to talk about the 22 movies I watched in February. So I watched quite a bit. You'll get new releases on here. You'll get lots of horror, and you'll also get my Rocky and Creed franchise on this list. So without making this video way too long, and I guarantee it's going to be a long one, let's get started with the first movie I watched. And technically, these two movies I saw on the same night. The first movie I watched that night was Fear. And this is like an indie horror movie that I think took place in Canada, I want to say. And it's about like this group of friends that goes to this hotel, and there's something sinister on with it. Turns out every room caters to the person's fear. This movie was different, to say the least, and I just really didn't care for it. It's probably a movie that I'll never watch again. But moving on. The next movie I watched that night was one of my most anticipated movies of February. And that movie was Knock at the Cabin. And this is based off of Paul Tremblay's 2018 novel, The Cabin at the End of the World. And I am currently reading it. I'm hoping to possibly finish it tonight. But I mean, if I don't, that's okay. I'll finish it in the next couple of days. But anyway, this is the story of a gay couple and their adopted daughter. And they just want to spend a weekend in the cabin. But then a group of 4 people enter without them wanting them to enter. Something like that. And they tell them their task is to sacrifice one of their own to prevent the apocalypse. This is a really tense thriller, and it's one of M. Night Shyamalan's best. And the book is just as well done. So I really enjoyed Knock at the Cabin. The next movie is a rewatch of Child's Play 1988. So this is like the OG Chucky. And I've seen this movie countless times. Not going to spend much time talking about it, but it's about the single mother and her son. And the mother wants to get something very special for his birthday, so she gets a good guy doll. But this good guy doll ain't right at all, because it's possessed by the spirit of Charles Lee Ray, which was a serial killer that got shot in the beginning, and he transferred his soul into this doll. Thus, Chucky is born. So, yeah, one of my favorite slasher franchises that I would definitely like to talk more about on this channel. So, possibly look out for a Child's Play ranking and review. But I just put this on for fun. But moving on, the next movie I watched was The Uninvited. This was released in 2009. So God, just as I was getting out of high school, and I've seen this movie a few times, but it has been a minute. And I didn't know this at first, but this is actually an American remake of a very, very popular Korean horror film called The Tale of Two Sisters. And this is about one of the sisters reeling after losing her mother in a fire. So you realize that she's not right during this movie. She actually gets released from like a mental asylum or something. And her dad moves on with like a new girlfriend of his, played by Elizabeth Banks. And this is just a deep psychological thriller on grief. The biggest twist that this movie has to offer is that her sister, which helps her find out what's happening with this new woman, she was dead the entire time with her mom. So I'm like, what? But this is a very underrated PG-13 horror. I would definitely recommend it if you're into that. But that was The Uninvited. Following that is going to be... so I got 5 of these movies. And back in the 2000s, there was like this indie horror film festival. And it was called the After Dark Horror Fest. I watched 5 of these selections this month. First one I want to show off is Unrest. So this was released in 2006, 2007. And this is the story about like a medical student working in a morgue. And she gets this mysterious cadaver. Turns out this cadaver is not normal. There's something extremely wrong with her. And everybody she knows close to her starts dying one by one. This movie is very unsettling. And this whole horror fest is probably some of the best horror that I remember growing up with. I mean, I was like 16 when all this came out, so yeah, it was definitely horrifying. But I really did enjoy this one. It's one of my favorites in this festival, but that was the first one I watched. Next one, and if you've been following my channel lately, you know that I've been going through Rocky and Creed. So, of course, I'm doing this for the release of Creed 3, which is coming out on Friday. And this is the original 1976 Best Picture winner. And this is about an underdog boxer trying to live life day to day in Philadelphia, but he is challenged by Apollo Creed to become the next heavyweight champion of the world. So he also meets Adrian in here, and they start dating, and in later sequels, they're married. And this also has Paulie in it, which is kind of a douche in this one, but he has shining moments throughout the whole franchise. One of my favorite sports movies of all time, and one of my favorite movies of all time. That was Rocky. And by the way, the ending ends in a draw, and it has Apollo Creed win. But that is not Rocky's victory. Rocky's victory is getting the love of Adrian. So it's definitely a great underdog story. Following that is Rocky 2. And this is basically like a rematch between Rocky and Apollo Creed. So Rocky gets married in this one, but Adrian has trouble delivering his son, Robert. And throughout this movie, Adrian is actually in a coma. So he goes to Mickey to help prepare for the rematch for Apollo Creed. And of course, Rocky wins in this one. So, yeah. And if you want my full thoughts on all these Rocky and Creed movies, I have a single review for every single one. So, take a look at it. But moving on, the next movie I watched was my second selection in the After Dark Horror Fest, Dark Ride. And out of all these movies, this is my favorite because it's like a throwback at an abandoned amusement park. That was hard to say. But yeah, this is just like a schlocky, fun House of a Thousand Corpses adventure. But I really did enjoy this one quite a bit. I've seen it most times than any of these other ones. That was Dark Ride. Moving right along, next one I watched was The Grave Dancers. Another very creepy one. And this is about like a group of friends that went to college together, and they're reunited after one of their friends dies. So it starts off with like the friend's funeral, and then they get drunk one night and decide to dance on graves, causing multiple ghosts to haunt them and kill them. So yeah, some of the special effects do not hold up in this one, but it's still a fun time. That was The Grave Dancers. The next movie I watched was Rocky 3, and this is part 1 of 80s Rocky. And his foe here is Clubber Lang. So this is definitely one of the cheesiest Rocky movies, but it's still very good because Apollo decides to side with Rocky to bring down Clubber Lang once and for all. But Clubber Lang pushes Mickey to death. So Mickey like literally has a heart attack. And that motivates Rocky to take down Clubber Lang. So this introduced Eye of the Tiger, one of the best workout songs of all time. And it's still one of my favorite Rocky movies. But you'll see where this lands when I rank that series coming up in the next few days. So look forward to that video. Moving on. The next 3 movies I watched were in the MCU. So that first movie I watched was Ant-Man. And I did do a separate video on the Ant-Man trilogy. Check that out if you want my full thoughts. But this introduces Scott Lang, which is like a small-time criminal who befriends Hank Pym, and Hope Van Dyne, and Hank Pym gives him like this suit that shrinks him down to molecular size. And he is against Yellow Jacket, played by Corey Stoll, which you'll see later in Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. And that is still an eyesore. But this is just like a very, very small scale Marvel movie. It's a very, very small scale Marvel franchise, I should say. But I still have fun with this. These three just haven't been my favorite in the MCU. But I can still watch it here and there. But that was Ant-Man. So naturally, Ant-Man and the Wasp is next. And this sequel was released 3 years later in 2018. And the Wasp finally teams up with Ant-Man, and they get like another side adventure that's very small scale. And the main villain in here is Ghost, which is like this woman that kind of like transports through solid objects, and she's kind of blurry at some parts. But I just thought that this movie was okay. So this ends with the after effects of the snap, and this leads into Infinity War. But that was Ant-Man and the Wasp. Which leads me to Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. And this is the start of Phase 5 and the introduction to Kang the Conqueror, just played by Jonathan Majors. And this movie was wild, but just okay, like I said. And like I mentioned, Corey Stoll is back in here, and now he's MODOK. And that design did not look good whatsoever. I mean, he was just like in a very tiny body with an oversized head. So yeah, I still think about that nightmare-inducing image. But for the introduction of a new big bad, I kind of like Kang in this one, but we'll definitely see more of him throughout phases 5 and 6. So this dude is not done yet. And we also get Cassie Lang as Stature in here. She was good, but I just thought that this movie was fine. Moving on, I got Rocky 4. This is one of my favorites in the franchise because it has my favorite foe for Rocky, Ivan Drago. So, Rocky goes to Russia in this one to defeat Ivan Drago once and for all. But he gets a consequence of losing Apollo Creed in this one. That turned out to be just an exhibition fight, but Ivan Drago essentially beat Apollo Creed to death. So, this one is definitely packed with emotion, and you definitely feel the victory when Rocky beats Ivan Drago. Very good one. Moving on to Rocky 5. And it's kind of like the black sheep of the Rocky franchise. This was released in 1990, And this is like the darkest moment for Rocky fans, because this is kind of like a grittier take. It literally takes Rocky to the streets, and he tries to train this new up and coming fighter, Tommy the Machine Gun. But Tommy just abandons him, and he fights with George Washington Duke, which is a promoter, and he gets sidestepped because he didn't become the heavyweight champion of the world because he fought a second-rate fighter. But the ending to this film is very small scale. It's not like any other Rocky movie. This is just like a street brawl. I enjoyed this, but it is definitely the weakest of the franchise, in my opinion. But moving on, the next movie I watched was kind of technically a DNF, but I mean, I watched most of it to like at least acknowledge it. Penny Dreadful. And this is the story of like a therapist and her patient uh, driving through the mountains. And then they meet this mysterious hitchhiker, and the therapist ends up dead. So the patient tries to escape. That's all I can say about this. I thought it was just fine. But moving on. Now I have 5 movies still to talk about. But the next movie I watched was Jesus Revolution. And this was just released on the 24th. This is usually not my kind of movie, but I was curious on it. It's a true story about how hippies found religion. And Kelsey Grammer meets this Jesus lookalike, and they both like start a church together, and they reunite all of these hippies to become religious freaks. That's all I can say about it, but it actually was a pretty decent movie. But not as memorable as the next movie, Cocaine Bear. And I just recently reviewed this, so check that out. It's a really cool video. But this is based off of a true story that happened in 1985. And cocaine was lost in the Chattahoochee National Forest in Georgia. And a black bear got into it. And he went on a rampage. But this is like a horror comedy take. So I definitely had fun with this. So if you want my full thoughts, watch that video. But continuing on, I watched Creed. And this is a Rocky spinoff, of course, that focuses on Apollo Creed's son, Adonis. So in this one, he seeks out Rocky's help to go against Pretty Ricky Conlon. A very, very good spinoff that, in my opinion, gets better in the second one, Creed 2. And this reunites Ivan Drago. He now has a son named Victor. And Adonis and Victor go toe-to-toe to claim the title. So, thus far, the final fight in this movie is a highlight for me, because that is a very brutal fight. But once I get to Creed 3, I will tell you which one is my favorite, so stay tuned. But right now, Creed 2 is easily in the top 3. It could go down if Creed 3 lives up, but I'm not budging that right now. But, wow. I finally made it to the final movie I watched, and that was last night, Lake Dead. And this is like my second watch of it. And boy, I got this movie wrong. But this is about like a group of friends that find out that the sister's grandfather died. And you're following these 3 sisters, which turns into 2. And this is kind of like a slasher, but this is kind of like Wrong Turn stuff and Hills Have Eyes, because these sisters are trapped in an incestuous family. So the family just has sex with each other, and it's not really pleasant, but this was goofy, but I did enjoy it for what it was. And before I forget it, I just want to add this line in here. There's a very small part in here where one of the dudes falls for like his girlfriend's friend, and they decide to, and she says to him, "I hope that wood can light my fire." I died inside. I just had to add that in when I talked about this movie. But yes, it was really, really fun, but really goofy at the same time. And that, folks, is the 22 movies I watched in February. Hope you guys enjoyed, and look forward to my Creed 3 review, followed by my Rocky and Creed ranking. And then you'll also see a Scream 6 review, a 65 review, which I'm very much looking forward to. I'm going to do a Shazam dual review, because Shazam Fury of the Gods is coming out. And then throughout March, I'm going to do a John Wick ranking and review, because John Wick Chapter 4 comes out at the end of March. So you'll definitely see me in this set quite a bit in March, because holy crap, March is huge. But that's all I got for you guys today. Hope you enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, and I'll see you Friday for my Creed 3 review. Adios. Peace.